Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Barrel. And today we're going to be looking at my prediction. I'm sure you've already seen Kai's ladder prediction, but if not, make sure to check that out as well. And now we're going to be having a look at my ladder prediction. Some similarities, some differences. So we're going to have a good discussion and see where we agree and where we may have a couple of differences. So, in 18th position, drum roll please, a shock to all, the West Coast Eagles.
Oh,
Uh, as Kai did say, obviously a lot of experience going out, very young side, have injuries. I think there'll be more positive signs this season for the Eagles, with maybe a couple of players shows something. Harley Reid is going to be the biggest talking point, obviously, how he goes. But it's still going to be a long time until the Eagles are back up near the spot they want to be. So I have them finishing in 18th position. In 17th spot, I have the North Melbourne Footy Club, the Kangaroos. Uh, Again, I think they'll have a better season than last year. They must. They've got so much talent on their list. But in saying that, they're such a young side, and all their really high end talent is still very young. Um, the likes of Wardlaw, Sheasel, McKercher, Dersma, Phillips, all still, in their first, second, third season. So it's still going to be a while before they get up the ladder. The defense also is deplorable, really. It's the worst backline in the competition, worst backline probably in the competition for a while. So if the
they got
midfielders
they
are getting
have
on top,
they have lots of running backs who don't like to defend.
that's true. And then their key backs just don't stock up. As well. So if the midfield is not getting the job done, they're going to get some heavy scores kicked against them. So that's why, and to go with the lack of experience, I have them in 17th. Although I think it'll be a much more enjoyable season for North Melbourne fans than the last four seasons. Really, I don't think they've won more than 3 games in since 2019. So it should be a better season than that for North Melbourne fans. But again, it'll still be a while until they're back up the top of the ladder. But once these guys are in there sort of hitting the 23, 24 age bracket, it'll be look out for the rest of the competition. In 16th spot, I have my Hawks in 16th position. Again, very young side. We've got a very hard start to the season. Essendon round one, Melbourne, Geelong, Collingwood, and then the Gold Coast on the Gold Coast. So odds are, with some injuries as well, blank Day. Day won't be playing those first 5 rounds. Such a crucial player. It's the Hawks reigning best and fairest winner. In all likelihood, the Hawks will be 0-5, and it's sort of hard to get your season going from that point. They'll have some good wins against some strong opposition. Similar to North Melbourne, I expect we'll also have some good wins. But again, such a young side, it'll still be a couple of seasons till they're contending again. But again, I have no doubt that once they're younger players, McKenzie, McDonald, Newcomb, Day, all these guys are in their prime. They'll be right up the higher end of the ladder. And to round out my top four, this one could be a bit of surprise to some. I think it'll be a shock to some others. I have the Gold Coast Suns in 15th position
Oh,
in 2024.
I like
Um,
this.
Obviously, bringing in Dimmer Hardwick, they've got talent upon talent on the list, but what's the evidence that they're gonna suddenly rise up the ladder? They've never done it before, so until I see anything to prove otherwise, the Suns are going to stay in my bottom four. So they finished 15th in 2023. They haven't brought anyone in. They brought in the draftees, but none of them are going to have a massive impact straight away. So I've got them finishing in 15th spot again. They've got the talent to potentially go as far as making the top 8, but until I'm shown otherwise, I've got them in 15th spot. In 14th, actually one spot higher than you had them, Kai, but I've got the Richmond Footy Club. Lots of negativity around the Tigers going into this season. Obviously, not a great 2023 season, and then losing some experience as well. But they've still got a lot of really good players on their list. Dustin Martin, Shea Bolton, Taranto, Hopper, Bolter. Tom Lynch once he comes back into the side. There's some very good players there. So they've got, if it all sort of works out, they're another team that could go as far as potentially contesting for a top 8 spot. So plenty of talent still there. But it'll be more of a watch this season, I reckon, for the Tigers to see how their younger players go. Obviously, they haven't really hit the draft much at all in recent times. They had that one draft where they got Gibcus and a couple of others. But as far as the young talent on the list goes, it's a little bit dry as it stands. So I reckon it could be a couple of years of hurt for the Tigers. But as I say, they've still got enough good players to be competitive with some pretty good sides as far as 2024 concerns. So 14th for Richmond. In 13th spot, I have the Essendon Footy Club, sliding down a couple of spots on the ladder. I think their ladder position probably, they won some games maybe they shouldn't have last year, and they when they did lose, there were some big margins as well last season. So I reckon their wins and loss tallies might have niced them a little bit. They have brought in some players. I like the move of Nick Martin to the back line. Ben Mackay is obviously a big inclusion. Is he a very good key back? Who knows? He could be. Probably not at this stage. Gresham is a good in, some class in their forward line that they've been lacking, but I don't see really anything to suggest they're going to suddenly shoot up the ladder. They could do, but I have them in 13th as it stands. Probably still looking at their young players to see how they can improve as far as Essendon's concerned. So I have them in 13th, sort of stagnating from season 2023. In 12th, it's a little bit higher than you had them, Kai, but I have the Fremantle Dockers. People forget they finished 5th and won a final just 2 seasons ago. And that was with a lot of young players. So realistically, they should be better now than they were back then. That doesn't really seem to be the case. They have lost a fair few players in Schultz. And was the other one, the young fellow, Liam Henry, who's gone to the Saints. So
it wasn't that important for them, though.
No, it wasn't that important. Brayshaw and Sarong, obviously, the watch. Jackson, Darcy, some pretty good players there.
Nat
their
Five
still concerns me. Nat Five, could he return to some good form? That could be very important for them. But overall, I just reckon they just don't quite have the star power that some of the other teams above them have. And they're very much still a work in process. They're still a pretty young side. So again, another one who could be a strong side, but maybe not quite in 2024. In 11th spot, it's sort of my gut versus my head in this one. I've gone with my gut, and I've got the Saints in 11th spot. It's a weird one with St Kilda because they've got a lot of really good young players, like the names that Kai was mentioning in his video. Windhanger, Wanganing Millera, Philippou, Owens, so many good young players. Wilson, who they just drafted. So, but is their star quality good enough to get them into that top 8 and potentially winning a couple of finals? I just don't think so. So I reckon they're still a couple of years away from being that really top team, that really top side. And I do think it'll be their younger core, which is the one that's leading them there. But I still think it's a couple of years off for the Saints because I think that the players in their prime, as it stands, just aren't quite good enough to be winning finals, and they sort of got shown up a bit when they faced a very good Giants side last year in their final. In 10th spot, this could be a little bit controversial. Some people expecting them to rise up the ladder a little bit. I've got the Adelaide Crows.
No.
Now,
no.
I thought you wouldn't agree with this one very much. You had them a bit higher than this. But in 10th spot, I have the Crows. I really like what they're doing, but I just have them stagnating a little bit. I don't think they quite have the star quality of the teams above them. Their defense still worries me. Plenty of strong sides. Their midfield is good. Is Rankin and Rochelle, two very talented players, but are they reliable enough? Still remains to be seen. You guys nodding his head. Is Tex Walker going to kick 70+ goals again? I'd be surprised. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Crows go. I still think they're very much on the right track. but potentially a stagnant year where they sort of stay in the same spot before they really kick on. But this is they've gotten to the battling for a top 8 spot, but going from this to a top 4 contending for a premiership, it's so difficult. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can get there. And as it stands, I just don't think they have the stars that some of the other teams have, or the depth of stars that some of the other sides have. And as I said, they're going to get some big scores kicked against them because their backline doesn't stack up, in my opinion. In 9th spot, I have their cross-town rivals in the Port Adelaide Footy Club. The Power finished 3rd in 2023 before going out in straight sets. They went on that crazy run. What did they win? Like how many in a row did they win? Like 13 in a row or something ridiculous. That's not going to happen again. They sort of tailed off a bit towards the end of the season. Some very good young players. I'm a bit worried about their avenues to goal. They've got lots of key forwards. But, are any of them good enough? Charlie Dixon keeps, he's one of my favourite players, Charlie Dixon, but, can he keep battling away? Misses quite a few games.
That's the first time I've ever heard anyone say that. Charlie Dixon is my favourite player.
He's one of my favorite. Not all. He's great. I love the way he crashes packs and just puts his all. He's great. Is Charlie Dixon. But I've got the Power in 9th. They could surprise me. Obviously, Butters and Rosie, they're the stars. Horn Francis, can Wines return? I like what they did in the trade period. They addressed what they needed, which was key defensive depth. But are Radagalier and Zerk Thatcher really, are they that good? Remains to be seen. Radagalier probably is the one I'm more bullish on. Probably has the potential to become a very good key back. Very good AFL footballer, but hasn't been shown as of yet. So I have them in 9th spot. Now, my top 8, the 8 sides competing for the premiership in September. In 8th spot, I have the Geelong Cats. The Cats won the premiership in 2022, dropped down, had quite a lot of injuries, and in 2023, dropped down to 12th on the ladder. But I reckon they'll bounce up a little bit this year. They're going to still be very hard to beat. They've still got so many good players on their team. They're aging a little bit, but when the game gets close, they'll probably have some close games. I still think they'll win those. At Geelong, they're still going to be so hard to beat. So I reckon they'll get enough wins to sneak into the finals. I don't think they're quite good enough to really compete for another premiership. But, similar to sort of a Hawthorn 2018, Richmond 2022 sort of season where, a former great team sort of, has a better season, makes finals, but probably isn't really a premiership threat. So that's where I sort of see the Cats in 2024. In 7th spot, I have the Western Bulldogs returning to the finals. They could be higher, they could be lower. I've got them making my finals series. I just think they have too much talent to miss out again. Riley Sanders, he's going to be one of the top contenders to the Rising Star, absolute star in the preseason game. Been watching the Dogs closely, obviously, with Hawthorn playing them in the 2 practice games, and they look on. Norton and Ugle-Hagan. Ugle-Hagan's the one for me. I reckon he will be the best key forward in the competition in the next couple of seasons. He's a star. The backline still has its concern. I reckon Caulfield is a very underrated pickup from the Saints. He was a very strong contributor a couple of years ago. So he's an underrated pickup. Liam Jones, it's amazed me how well he did in his year back, and he seems to still be going pretty well from what I'm seeing. So the Dogs returning to finals. They could, if it all goes right, contend for a top 4 spot, but I just don't quite have enough faith to put them up there. So I have them in 7th spot. 6th, this could be a little bit controversial. I reckon quite a few people could have this team a bit higher. I have Carlton in 6th.
Right.
Now, this was really tricky because I reckon they have the players, to really contend for that premiership, and I could be proven wrong. And they're one of the teams I reckon really could win the premiership in season 2024. However, There's just other teams that I trust a little bit more. People forget they were 15th after in like round in as late as round 16 last year. Obviously had an outstanding into the season, won a couple of finals. They were very close though. So, you know, they could have lost to the Swans and the Demons, and people aren't really talking about them in the same way. How much scope for improvement is there? Maybe a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see. I'm not really sure who their young players are. They're getting on a bit now. They're right in their prime. This is the time for the Blues. So it's sort of the next few seasons is when they're going to be looking to win their premiership with Curnow, Cripps, Walsh, all in their prime. So Wiedering as well, another one. So definitely a premiership threat, but I have them just outside because I just trust the teams I have above them a little bit more. In fifth spot, I have the Melbourne Football Club. Finished fourth last season, went out in straight sets. I have them just dropping out of the top four. Lots of off-field issues, but, you know, they've still got the best defence and the best midfield in the competition, in my opinion. You know, Petrarca, one of the best in the competition. May and Lever still outstanding. It was just their goal kicking that cost them last year. Really should have won that qualifying final against the Pies, and really should have won their semi-final as well against the Blues if they could, you know, if they could score. Really, that's what it came down to. Van Rooyen is the one. I reckon he's the guy. If he can get to the next level, it's probably a lot to ask for a third year key forward. But if he can be the guy, that'll go a long way. They just need to find different avenues to goal. They looked really good in that practice game against the Blues. So if all went well, they could contend for the premiership. In fact, I think they will contend for the premiership, but I have them just outside the top four for mine. Okay, the top four. This is where it really gets interesting. In fourth spot, I have the reigning premiers in Collingwood in fourth spot. Really, I think they're as good as anyone. I think their team is as good as anyone. I just reckon reigning premiers, maybe you just slack off just ever so slightly, especially in the home and away season. Maybe just drop off just that tiny little bit to finish. But I think they'll still do enough to make sure that they finish the top four and give themselves every chance of going back to back because they're just too good not to. And if they didn't, I'd be surprised. You always say you can't see a team having a premiership hangover. That's what everyone always says, and it seems to happen every second year, it feels like. So it's always a possibility. But I think the Pies are just still in the prime. Nick Dacos is only going to get better. So very much another chance to win a premiership for the Collingwood Footy Club. In third spot, I was a bit surprised how low you had this side, Kai. I've got the Sydney Swans. The Swans.
Too high.
Too high? Too high, you reckon, for the Swans? I reckon the Swans made the grand final in 2022, had a little blip last year, still did really well to make the finals, and just lost that final to the Blues. Got really close. If they won that, you know, they could have been, you know, who knows how far they could have gotten in that final series. Gordon is going to become one of the best players in the competition, hands down. Chad Warner had a down year. If he returns to his best, they've still got Parker. Heaney had a bit of a down year. They had quite a few guys who had a bit of a down year in 2023. So I reckon they can get back up. Concerns over their forward line with Buddy leaving. I really rate the forwards they have. Amadi, McDonald as well. They did well last year. Buddy didn't play the last sort of month and a half of the season. He didn't play most of last season, really, and I thought the others really stood up well. And they're all pretty young. So McLean was very good in that final. I reckon the combination of McLean, McDonald, and Amadi, I think they'll do just fine. So I've got the Swans in third spot, contending right at the top. Again, obviously got one of the best coaches in the competition in Horse, John Longmire. So I have them in third. In second spot, I have the GWS Giants. GWS Giants, and obviously you can work out that I have in top spot the Brisbane Lions. The GWS Giants, when they're on, they are on. They only got better as the season went on last season. They look like the best side in the final series. Just went down in that final at the MCG to the Pies, which, 95,000 Collingwood supporters against the Giants to only lose by 1 point against the eventual premiers. Unbelievable. What a season it was from last year. And I reckon that heartbreak can really take them to another level again. Toby Green, arguably the best player in the competition. Tom Green going to go to another level again, you would suspect. And their system is really working. Their movement from the halfback, the orange tsunami, as it was. I'm so bullish on what the Giants can do. And in top spot, the Brisbane Lions, they're just going to win at the Gabba. So they're going to get the most wins. So they're going to finish top of the ladder. That's the way I see it, And they have become a much more reliable side in recent times. I think this was really shown in the preliminary final. That was the one where they got, but pretty much they were shell shocked early in that game. They were pounced 5 goals to none in the first half of the first quarter. But it was a real sign of maturity that they were able to sort of get control back of that game and were back in front by half time. As Chris Fagan said, the first time he arrived, they're going to fail their way to the top, and that premiership defeat is going to hurt. It's going to be a real test to see how they respond to that. Because, a lot of teams, when you lose a game like that in a grand final, it can really hurt. But, the Lions, they really impressed me last year. And, at the Gabba, they're basically, didn't lose a game there last year. They feel unbeatable there. So they're just going to win games and they're going to finish top of the ladder. So there it is. There's my home and away season ladder. There it is.
Fair few differences between us, but
a couple of differences.
Nonetheless, very.
Which one shocked you the most? And would you like to give a counter argument?
No, I would not. But Sydney, you can watch my video for my counter argument, but Sydney third for you was a shock for me, to be honest. But
really, yeah, I reckon they're going to come. I reckon they're going to return to the top 4. That's my view.
Well,
I like what they.
Round 0 is just around the corner. They kick off their season against the D's, and we will have more prediction videos out just before the season starts. We're going to look at the Brownlow, Coleman, All-Australian team, premiers, runners-up. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.